Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you, it finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. That's ziprecruiter.com/zip. ziprecruiter.com/zip.
Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack 4 Business Podcast.
Question of the audience. How do you take your brand into a new market and actually win without wasting time, money, or opportunity? Pedja will reveal how to enter new markets with clarity, secure shelf space, and turn brand positioning into real commercial results. He'll show how disciplined storytelling, smart execution, and operational excellence drive market share and long-term growth. And our guest today is Pedja Radjenović. Pedja is a growth-focused business leader and educator who knows how to turn complex marketing realities into clear, measurable success. With over a decade leading international CPG brands across North America and Europe, he's built a reputation for translating strategy into action, driving market share, revenue, and brand equity through sharp positioning, disciplined storytelling, and operational excellence. Inspired by the relentless mindset of his role model, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Pedja brings ambition, clarity, and execution together to help businesses scale with purpose and precision. Pedja, welcome today, sir, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Do you have a favorite quote or saying, sir?
Well, thank you for having me, Bernie. Yes, I do. Hard work beats the talent when a talent doesn't work hard. That's my favorite quote.
Ooh, I like that.
I find it very truthful.
And do you have a tagline?
So the tagline that I'm using as of recently is a storytelling as a way to new value. Basically, I'm a firm believer of a brand as a business concept, and within that, the storytelling is something that actually truly opens up the new opportunities and way to new value. So yeah,
Excellent. So you're when I look back on your LinkedIn profile, you have a really interesting story of different things you've done, but one of them has been involved with the beer industry and helping market material into that. And now you've kind of drifted into a kind of a new space about business and growth. Talk to us about the journey that went from one door to the next.
well, yes, I think that what I'm doing now is kind of a logical step from where I was. I started my career in the big CPG or FMCG companies, consumer packaged goods, and then built my career in Europe from a local to regional and then to global roles. And essentially, I was doing everything within brand management, creating campaigns and ensuring that the brands grow.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you, it finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. That's ziprecruiter.com/zip. ziprecruiter.com/zip.
Across all the levers of the marketing mix. And Been in Canada for almost a decade now, and since I've exit my corporate career, I've decided to rely on my experience and knowledge and pass that on to other companies, helping them grow. So the journey is now helping namely CPG, consumer packaged goods companies, get on the shelf with the retailers, getting them to new markets if they feel like or they're ready for that, and helping them reshape their brand strategy if they need that.
So, what's your biggest turning point in customer goods? Tell me about that story a little more.
Thanks, Wayne. So my turning point in my career was stepping up to the global role in Carlsberg and overseeing the brand from the global level, understanding how difficult it is to synchronize the brand presence across different markets, working with multiple teams across different cultures and ensuring the common denominator and that the brand is built simultaneously across geographies, regardless of the timing of the launch or of the local nuances. So it was a huge step up for me, and it really changed the way that I understand and see the business and basically synchronize the entire brand presence across different markets.
When you're launching out, you talked about Carlsberg, for example, right? And the product is getting launched. Would it not be more regional? Like, you might find a certain flavor. It could be like ice cream. Everybody in this country likes vanilla a lot. This country over here, though, it's macadamia nuts, right? And then over there, it's chocolate. How do you synchronize those nuances, but at the same time, it's the same company?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, the beer itself is a very traditional market, and I think on a decline a little bit recently because of all the new products that have been launched in the beverage industry. At the time when I was working at the global team, our biggest task was to help Asian markets, which were emerging and growing significantly, to establish the brand positioning in its core. Nowadays, it's changing. I want to say it's becoming more local. It's becoming more crafty, even though there's a number of craft breweries, especially in developed markets like here in North America. But those smaller brands have a limited reach, but still can make a great footprint and create a big legacy on the local level. To come back to your question, Bernie, like each market has its own nuances and own specifics, and not every brand can succeed in every market. But in my experience, there's three key points that every brand has to rely on when they're launching in a new market. The first one is ensuring the distribution and the physical availability. Basically, if you don't have the brand available for the purchase, you cannot succeed, as simple as it sounds. The second one is ensuring the trial so that consumers can taste it or test it, regardless of the industry. And then the final one is smartly building the brand awareness because consumers or customers have to know and hear about the brand and get familiarized with it. So that particular is can be very costly and therefore smartly thought through and executed.
Pedja, years ago, when you thought of brands, you thought about a box, whether it was a soap or a spaghetti sauce or a deodorant, you thought it was a SKU, something on a rack. And now yourself, you're building a brand and you aren't a SKU. What's similar and what's different to selling a service from a product, in your opinion?
Well, that's such a great question, Wayne. Well, the brand as a business concept has so many different understandings. The key difference, of course, product to service is when you buy a product, you have a tangible physical thing. When you're buying a service, it's very intangible. Now, if we speak about traditional services, such as lawyers, architects, or hairdressers, that service is, again, tangible in our minds because we're so familiar with it, like generations before us used it. Now, if we're using some of the new services, a podcast, for example, or digital marketing or consulting, it's the key task is for us who are selling it to make it tangible, to make it visible and clear for the prospects, for the customers who are to buy it. That basically means that functional features of the brand, whether it's K4 podcast or is it way to new value or is it any other professional service, the functional benefits have to be clear. What am I as a potential customer getting from it? And then the emotional features are overlaying that. And I want to say are even more important because as a potential customer, I need to feel confident that if I buy your service, I'm going to actually get what you're promising to me, what your brand is promising to me. When you're selling a physical product, it's obviously much, much easier. If I'm buying a soap, to your example, like that soap, I will have a clear impression of that soap and of its quality once I use it. And before that, the packaging would help. But it's much, much easier to communicate those features for the physical products. Did that answer the question?
Yep. So when you're launching a product, like obviously a beer, people already have an understanding behind it. Let's say you're launching a new product. How do you convince the retailer to put it on the shelf? How do you convince them that, yeah, this is worthy? Whether it's the Costco of the world, or maybe it's the virtual one, the Amazon giant in the sky, so to speak. How do you convince them? Go, yeah, let's put this on the shelf and let's give this a spin.
It's another great question, Bernie. Thank you. Your brand has to have, as I mentioned, functional and emotional benefits for its target audience. Your brand is obviously competing against the similar ones in the same category or the complementary categories. Therefore, when approaching retailers, one of the key things is to align your brand story to the retailer's brand story. How is it going to fit into the entire offering of the retailer? How is it going to attract new potential new shoppers? How is it going to increase the shopping basket for them? How is it basically going to add value, your brand, to retail so that they have more reasons to put it on the shelf? And sometimes it's not easy at all because if we're looking at take chocolate category, like there's so many new brands out there. So why should the Costco, to your example, put the new chocolate? Or am I able as a chocolate producer to provide a Costco with the offering that they have, usually like the big packaging at the price that they or they want to put on the shelf in order to build the sellout quicker? So it really has to be a smart pitch that combines both stories on the brand side of the brand owner and the retailer, but also good calculations, understanding what is it that we can take as a brand offering to the retail in order to create a certain price so that it can move on the shelf.
I find interesting in this that we learned in the pandemic. We have, I guess you'd call, global brands, and then we have the strength of regional brands. And with this new tariff world, there's the where's the brand being produced?
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ziprecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ziprecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ziprecruiter.com/zip.
How does a global brand deal with regionalism? I mean, I know four regions in Canada that think separately. I'm guessing there's a half a dozen or more in the States that think separately, even though it's the States. How does a global company shape a regional brand in ways more than just changing a label? What do you do, if that makes any sense?
So I think there's two questions in what you just posed there, Wayne. One is, if I'm truly global company, how do I build brand consistently across geographies? And the other one is, if I'm a global company, whether I want to have some regional brands and some regional strengths. And then that's one position. The other position is, if I'm a regional company, and how do I want to expand onwards, and how do I want to build my regional brand? So in order to build global brand, need to have in order to build the brand in general, you need to have a strong brand strategy and a great positioning, clearly defined point of parities, which gives you the right to compete in the category, clearly defined points of differentiation. How are you different than the category? And something that people call differently, whether it's a brand essence or I call it a point of passion. Why is your brand so unique? And once you have that pyramid, that brand positioning clearly outlined, then it comes to what in marketing we call being local. So having that global positioning, but then how do we fine tune it or down tune it to the local cultural nuances in order to make that brand relevant in the culture? For us in the Western culture, and if the company's ambitions to go and spread out in the Western world, it's easier. But if you have bigger ambitions and you want to grow in other cultures, in other continents, be it South America, be it Africa or Asia, taking into account local insights and embedding them into the communication and brand building is the key to success. For the regional, and especially for us here in Canada, I think there's a lot of opportunities for brands to grow national at first, because as you mentioned, Wayne, we have a lot of great regional brands that are not being sold in other provinces. And that's, as a Canadian, that's where I would start. Like, how can I expand from Ontario to Maritimes? How can I effectively build my brand in the four provinces on the east of Canada in order to grow my business and make it more robust?
The whole branding element, and one of the other elements that we talked about earlier during the intro was storytelling. How do you shape, a story behind a brand product? Like, do you go back in 1882, Bobby was making chocolate, and he did a really good job, and then he did something special. He dipped hazelnuts into it. Next thing you know, you have a new chocolate bar. Or it can be the beer, right? And this one's a bit different. Guinness is a good example. Not everybody enjoys the flavor of Guinness per se, but it's a true story. And in fact, there's even a TV series out about the Guinness family, which probably helps drive the sales, indirectly. How do you find that story, and then how do you craft, especially if you're starting out? How do you shape here's a product, but it's more than just a product. Here's the emotion, because that's what you're hunting for, right?
Yes. So storytelling helps you embed the emotion into the brand or into the relationship with your consumer. And what you mentioned, Bernie, is definitely important, because I think the legacy and tradition is something that brands can always use, regardless if they want to be more conservative or more open and more modern in their approach to market. The tradition can be played in both ways, and the story can be crafted around that for sure. However, the brands have to be on the top of everything that happens in the society, and be flexible enough to use the momentum and embed it into their story. We had an unfortunate, but I think it's a good example of the Coldplay concert incident. And I find it tragic on one end that many brands use that story to build their awareness, but I understand why, because it really got a lot of the attention. And we can think of it whatever. Again, I personally don't think that's so ethical, but it's a great example of using the local story or the popular story, the something that caught attention to drive your own brand story. I think I don't have the exact data, but I think today we consume more information in one day than we did in the years after the Second World War. And in such a cluttered space and such a huge attack to our minds and our consciousness from all over the digital world, I think the consumer attention is the biggest currency. And in order to grow the brand and not just grow, but continue its life, we have to break that clutter. Being flexible is obviously a huge challenge for the big global brands. But if we don't communicate, if we don't have the strong story to tell.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
We're not going to sell. You have the, I don't know if you gentlemen are aware of the energy drink called Prime, but the Prime was launched by one of the biggest influencers on YouTube and social media overall, and it gained a huge success in its first year. All kids were asking for it. It was premium priced compared to the other energy drinks, but it's barely selling today because they launched on the popularity of the owner, but they didn't tell the story. They didn't continue telling the story in order to create the equity so that vast majority of the audience is familiar with it and then continue keeping it into their in their consideration set. So it's not easy. It's not easy, and therefore consistency is very important as well. Consistency in terms of pressure in the communication, getting out there and continuously communicating, but also having a meaningful, connected communication that ties back into the strategy and the brand essence and all the features and functions and emotions that the brand wants to convey.
My partner says I'm on a lake, which is somewhat rural near a small town that is reasonably close to a city that is in 2 hours from a bigger city. 70 years ago, your general store helped you pick your brand, and maybe your village helped you pick your beer. I mean, you mentioned Carlsberg. How do you deal with a mind that wants to feel local and connected, but they want to be branded to aspirational goals, and they fight, they compete? How do you get inside a mind and have him make decisions where the packaging and the marketing campaigns leak into each other?
I think the digital world and the revolution enabled us to have products available at our doorstep, and finding a good formula in that supply chain and how we make product available not only on the shelf but also on the online shelf or across different online customers and sellers is what I meant, is I think crucial for that, Wayne. To have Coca-Cola available is easy because the brand exists for more than 100 years and it built its awareness a long time ago and keeps reminding ourselves about their existence and engaging us with their tailored packaging and interesting campaigns. Every Christmas, we expect a new big commercial from Coca-Cola with Santa Claus and different story around that. But they have to be available in the online channels as well, despite the fact that almost every store, every retail or on-premise outlet carries the brand, them or Pepsi. But playing smart in that digital space in terms of sales, not only in terms of communication, is very, very important.
There's a lot of theories out there and they fight one another. There used to be first to market. And then Apple just said, no, we don't want to be first to market. Let them make the mistakes. I'll be second and make it better. How do you, if you're, how do you deal with those myths about whether to be first, whether to be a strong second, how to be the grippy upsell? Where are you on these things?
So I don't think in especially if we're looking at the consumer packaged goods, it's very difficult to be first in anything because I don't know, being first in Mars, if we ever inhabit that planet, is going to be the important thing. But in this planet, especially in the market that is already developed and that we play in, and that's where I look right now, is very hard to be first. Therefore, I want to say playing your own game for the smaller brands, rely on flexibility and keep that consistency in the communication across your touch points, wherever that may be, and use the momentum is, I want to say, the key. And then strategically working around the occasions that can create that pull in the market so that your product can be purchased at the higher scale, whether if it's Halloween or if it's Diwali or if it's Christmas, whatever it could be. And then if you're going to the new market, that's where you got to be very thoughtful and strategic about how are you going to enter in terms of sales channels, how are you going to build your distribution, and how are you going to build the awareness, breaking the clutter, and making your brand relevant to the local audience? I come from Southeast Europe, and 20 years ago, it was enough to be a foreign brand to grab the attention. Whether it was coming from Germany, Italy, or Canada or US, it didn't matter because it was foreign. I think those times are long past. Of course, that national pre-definition of a high German quality or uh, tasteful Italian food are still there, but it's only a small help. It if especially if a Canadian brand wants to go abroad, it has to look at its own strengths and figure out how to play and explain its benefits to the local consumers.
When you're building out the story, you're building up the brand, the product costs, let's say $5 to manufacture. What percentage of the branding exercise, the marketing campaign, adds the cost? Is it another 10 points, another 20 points just to roll it out, and then it kind of tapers down to 5 points to sustain it? What have you found from a marketing perspective from a budget? Because it doesn't matter whether you're just starting out and I'm making my brand new chocolate bar with a special hazelnuts as opposed to the standard one, right? Or even a craft beer. Right. If I'm about to launch something, how much should I expect to budget? And I guess it'd be a percentage. So if it costs $10 to make the product, I know I maybe have to do double that to have returns to cover costs and pay, have yield. But how much of that should I attribute back to the branding and the strategy for that?
Such a great question, Bernie. Thank you. Well, my suggestion is always don't go below 10 and make it up to 30 if possible, especially in the beginning. And that's only one layer to the investment. The other layer is how do you make your working versus non-working dollars? How do you actually portion your working versus non-working dollars? Because non-working dollars are the one that you're investing into production, whether it's a TV commercial or a videos or your copywriting, your creative, whatever that is. And the working dollars being the advertising money that actually help you amplify and essentially create that awareness. And then again, my experience says using the good old 80-20 rule in favor of working dollar is something that is still very valid and great formula to make sure that your marketing is actually doing the job. Of course, you have to be very careful in choosing the marketing channels and where do you reach the target audience, but that less to do with the investment.
If someone does a campaign, you'll see this with a certain furniture maker out of Sweden. Everything is flat, compact. Oh, by the way, if it's reusable, send it back. We might buy it from you, and everything is sourced. It's wood based. We minimize the impact on the environment. There could be other ones that support local charity groups. Whether it's the people in need of housing, need of food, right? And so different campaigns are pushed out, or they donate to a here in the Ottawa area and across Canada, United Way, for example, right? The kind of universal charitable organization. And so when someone says, "Hey, every time," there's another one. It's a sock commercial. You buy a sock, I'll give a sock to a homeless shelter, right? Because socks are in demand, and we make socks, right? But that's an example. Do you find that as a good driver, not only just to introduce the concept, especially if it hasn't been done before, but also to sustain a campaign?
Well, thank you for the clarification, Bernie. I think the charitable campaigns, be it for the cause of the environmental preservance or for the helping local community, or like the alcohol companies have don't drink and drive campaigns, and then they are being creative around how they call it and how they communicate. But those are all, I think, campaigns and important pillars of the brand building. In the end, we're all humans. And as a consumer, I want to know that the brand that I'm buying is also caring about the causes that I do care. To what extent I care about the environment versus local community versus responsible behavior in general is something that each brand has to uncover on their own and figure out how is it going to help them. I've had a numerous examples when we thought this type of campaign would help us differentiate in the market, um, and the competitor would go out in the market at the same time with the same topic, just the communication was different. And then we can argue whether that helps and it helps the category and it helps both brands or it doesn't. I think it's important to take into account in your communication, in the brand's communication, those bigger topics. However, even when those are taken on board, it has to have a unique twist, a distinctive twist that communicates, that wraps it up into the particular brand packaging.
40 years ago, they told us about subliminal messaging and how the message at the theater made you buy more hot dogs because, whatever. Do you find neurolinguistic programming or subtle hidden cues or are still there every day? Or or are people being more honest or are they being more, tell me a story.
So I discovered NLP impact by myself while I was watching um, a certain show long time ago and started eating a certain chocolate bar and much more than I used to. And when I immersed myself into marketing, I learned about all those techniques. I think that, AIs came out. It's not news anymore. It's there. It's definitely helping out marketers be even smarter, even more targeted. And I want to say that, having a great insight, knowing your target audience can definitely helps grow your brand. Now, all those psychological techniques that can help sales are still very valid, except we have to take into account the new environment, which is digital. And we have to know our audiences because we used to think of creating a great reach and building the awareness through TV campaigns and billboards. And modern generation is almost not watching TVs unless there's a particular game or a particular, not even a show. They watch it on their tablets and their laptops. So having a good insight and knowing your audience is more important than knowing any of the psychological techniques, in my humble opinion.
I got an interesting point here. Right now, we've been talking about visuals and sound bites. All right. So we'll see that. Well, here's a message that's either on a TV ad or you walk into a store and you see the product there. I've come across a couple of interesting things. It's haptics, touch. What is it? How does it feel in hand or smell? Or if you walked into a bakery, right, and they just finished doing those loaves, right? And that's just, you're there for the breads. You're already primed, right? So how do you kind of wrap up these pieces together? Or even better yet, the shape of the packaging. I was reading on LinkedIn, someone says, if it has a long, slender shape, like you see in perfume bottles, it seems to be the assumption might be it's going to be expensive, right? Regardless whether it is or not. Do you wrap those elements into the campaign too?
It's such a great
Uh,
question.
Is that a short, easy one answer?
A great and loaded question. Well, all those play the role, I want to say, in the brand building. Of course, we cannot use all, and we have to be mindful of, again, the category that we play in and the market that we play in. There's something that some others, much smarter marketers, called distinctive brand assets, and how do we build that those assets that are going to differentiate our brand in the marketplace is what you mentioned. Whether we play with the smell or we play with the sound, some retailers are playing particular music based on the research that they did in order to keep us longer in the store or sell, like prompt us to buy more. That's again part of the. It should be part of the strategy, but on this big palette of distinctive brand assets is definitely different features that we can use in order to distinct ourselves. And I think basically getting deeper into consumer minds so that when as consumers we think of particular category, we think of a certain brand is a huge success for the brand.
Something that is interesting from based on your studies, how an individual can be a brand and then pivot a brand. I hear you're a big Schwarzenegger fan. Tell me more.
So when I grew up, Terminator was getting out. I think I was a skinny kid, and with all his big muscles, he immediately became the role model. After I learned what he went through in his life and how he built his life, I think, and I learned that not so long ago when I was reading his biography. I think it's important to do things fully, like go all in, as they say, and then also have the courage to change, because that's what I've learned from him, and that's why I'm a big fan of his. Because coming to North America, coming to the United States with a thick German accent, he decided to become an actor, and he actually became a very successful actor. That just proves that hard work pays out, and that's why I'm a big fan.
This is a really changing environment. So when you talk about brand strategy, the brands themselves, the product, there's nothing new under the sun, but yet at the same time, you got to make it so. And then with technology rolling through is kind of another layer of adaptation. Could be packaging, producting. How do you stay in tune with that resonates well? So if you're selling a product that sells well with Gen Z, wonderful. or Gen X or baby boomers? And again, depends. I think Scotch will be probably the boomers, but just guessing versus maybe other beverages, right? How do you stay in alignment with the different ways to deliver the content and then going, hey, here's new opportunity. Or even better yet, you have an epiphany going, this hasn't been tried in the marketplace for this particular brand. Let's do this and make an Easter egg happen out of
And I'm going to repeat myself here, Bernie, but hard work beats the talent when the talent doesn't work hard. So, with all the tools available now, with the AI doing really miracles in terms of creating photos, creating videos, I recently saw a great that commercial that was completely created by AI. Brands have to work, have to go, and have to stay on the top in terms of like communicate and get the content out there. When I started off and long in my marketing career, we were all perfectionists. We were all having numerous rounds of revisions, of storyboards, of visuals, of like, is this really good enough? Should this point stand here or should we move it half a millimeter left or right? I don't think brands can afford that anymore because the competition is growing. To your point, nothing new under the sun, I think. And I had a recent LinkedIn post on that topic. I think it's less challenging now to launch a new brand because you can produce almost anything fairly easy today. But then again, to build a continuous success and grow and extend the brand life cycle is the key task. So I'd say using the technology and using it as an enrichment of all the traditional knowledge is as a good recipe for success. Of course, trial and error has never been more important, as I said, because there's so much content out there and so many assets that are constantly being launched, so that brands have to stay on the top of it.
Whether you're launching a spaghetti sauce or pivoting your life coaching brand or even being a general contractor, you need to make sure you're developing a brand. So here's my two questions. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what two good questions should they be asking themselves so that you can jump right in? And B, how would they get a hold of you?
Thank you. So the questions that any business should ask themselves is, how did this person or the potential customer or the lead, whatever terminology we want to use, has heard of me or my brand, and does that fit my overall brand strategy? Like for example, if I'm a general contractor and I come to you, Wayne, to refurbish your home, how did you hear of me? And what did you hear of me? And does that fit how I want to be seen? And that goes for all the services and all the brands and the products. Well, the easiest way to get me is on LinkedIn or via my email. It's pr@wtnv.ca. So it's very simple.
Pedja, I want to say thank you so much, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners, because you know what? Marketing strategy is everything. If reach out to Pedja, he can actually help you cut through the complexity, turn that strategy into real growth.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from @Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.